Just to let you guys know, this webinar will be recorded. Real quick, before we get things kicked off, we got about 2 minutes before the hour, so we'll give everyone a chance to get in, do a little bit of housekeeping real quick. First things first, can you hear me and see my screen? I'm gonna pop this thing out here. Yes and yes. Thank you, Josh. So we know at least one. I know at least one person can. Awesome, Rainer. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. Cool. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. I know it is it's a Tuesday afternoon. We've got some good stuff for you today. We're gonna walk through a few examples here, and really get some information on how to plan out your segmentation funnel in advance. Awesome, cool. Well, we've got 1 minute to go. Let's see, what else did I want to make sure you guys knew? So here's how I wanted to do this webinar today. So I'm flying solo again, it looks like. So what we'll probably do is, this is probably going to be one of those webinars where there's going to be a lot of questions asked throughout. And what I want to do is probably try to answer as many questions as we go along, as it makes sense. We'll do a Q&A at the end. But this is going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to be inside Bucket a lot. We'll take a look at a couple of things probably. And then during the Q&A section, if you have questions about implementing some of the things, like some segmentation funnel stuff inside of Bucket, I'll be happy to walk through and just kind of point those screens out to you. But the big idea here is really just to look at the process that goes into planning a segmentation funnel out. Okay, I've built, I don't know, personally probably 20 plus for different people in different industries. I have a process I use. I'm going to show you guys some examples from other segmentation funnels from users who have even more experience than I do, pushing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of sales and leads and all that good stuff through their funnels. So we'll be taking a look at a lot of advanced stuff, but even basic stuff. Okay, so so that's what's on the agenda. Okay, so we're gonna be looking at the ideas behind planning your segmentation funnel out. All right, I do obviously want to make sure everyone knows that just by being on this call, you qualify to talk to a bucket.io specialist. At the end, what I'll do is send out a link so that you can get on the schedule and get your, it's a 15-minute call over Zoom, not a phone call. And the reason we do Zoom is we give you the chance to do like a share screen share, either way. So that when we're talking, we can kind of look over your shoulder and see, oh, hey, you might need to do this with your account. So if that's something that interests you, stick around to the very end. I will definitely get you a link. It's 100% free. And in my experience, it's certainly very helpful to most people. Some, maybe not, but most people, 99%, it's super helpful for. So, anyways, the big idea for this webinar, like I mentioned before, is to give you the ideas so that you basically kind of get your inspiration moving for going out and planning out your own segmentation funnels. Segmentation funnels, as opposed to surveys, is what you'll be using to drive your cold traffic to and generating leads and sales. The segmentation funnel is created as a way for you to customize your sales messaging or your outcomes so that when people go through your funnel, you're giving them the exact solution to their problem, creating higher conversions and just a better overall experience with your marketing. All right, so by the end of this webinar, you'll know how to map one of those out. I'm going to show you several different examples. I think I've got 3 really good ones. So you'll see just like the different ways of mapping it out, some different concepts. And then I'm also going to give you a really cool template for preparing your entire segmentation funnel in advance. If you were here last week when I did this kind of similar webinar for surveys, I sent out I sent out something similar, but this one is for the segmentation funnels versus the survey. And if you want one for the surveys, just let me know in the comments, and I'll see if I can get you that link too. Anyways, all right. So the question is, why prepare ahead of time to begin with? Like, why would we even go through this process? And the answer is simple. Number one, you just want to make sure you get it right the first time. I mean, how bad would it stink to go get inside of Bucket software, which I'm guessing most of you probably don't have years of experience with. No one does, because it's a fairly new technology. You know, the time that it takes for you to go and build something in there, if you didn't do it right, you'll have to go back and fix it, and it's a time suck, and eventually, you know, you just end up throwing it away and never getting something serious off the ground. The other thing is that you want to make sure you're asking the right questions to get people to the correct outcomes, right? Because the idea behind the segmentation funnel is to get people to the solution that best fits their needs, not to send everyone to that same exact solution, which is what most marketers do, and they're missing out, I think, on the benefit of customizing that solution. But then, and again, kind of like with the whole get it right, just avoid confusion inside the software. Because if you've been inside Bucket, if you're on this call, you've probably been inside a Bucket before, and if you have all the questions, you got everything loaded up, it's not always as simple as, oh, I know exactly where it's at. The longer your segmentation funnel, the more questions you're asking, the more confusing it can get to look at. And so by planning it in advance, you can go in and identify where your questions are, and be able to navigate your own survey without needing to get all into the software. So that's why we've taken 2 webinars to kind of discuss the subject, and I suspect we'll be doing a lot more on this topic in the future as your guys' questions come in and we start seeing some other of your issues coming out of like the one-on-one calls and so on. Again, everything that we do, it's all about helping you guys get your stuff up and running. So the one thing I do want to point out though, and you guys may know this from using the software or just using Bucket or segmentations to begin with, or really any marketing, I think starts at this. But the most important step when it comes to segmentation funnels is starting with the outcome. I can't say that enough. When I go in to Bucket, the first thing I do in a segmentation funnel is I go in and I create all the outcomes. And if you don't know how to do that, well, I'll play with it in a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. But that's the first thing that I do, is begin with the outcomes so that I can, again, the way that it works is no matter what you do, you want people going to an outcome. So you start there first. A lot of the times I see people ask, what is an outcome, right? And an outcome could be totally different based on whatever you're doing. But at the end of the day, it's a customized solution. Instead of sending everyone to one solution, you've got multiple ways of presenting that solution. So it's either a customized presentation of one sales message or one product. It could be a specific product or a service that you offer, or it could be a customized collection of products and services. We're going to walk through a couple of these examples where you'll see exactly what the outcome is. And if you still have questions, again, obviously I'm going to want to, I'll take and answer all of them. But the idea of an outcome, what it is that last step before you say, hey, buy my thing, here's why, based on what you told me. So that's what I mean by an outcome. And by starting with that outcome, it makes the whole process simpler and gives you a lot more likelihood that it's going to be right that when they go through, they're not going to feel like, huh, did they just make that up out of thin air? Or instead of that, they're going to, if you plan it out correctly, starting with the outcome and ask the right questions, they'll feel like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what the solution is for me. So is this making sense to everybody, kind of why we would do all this and set this up to begin with? Josh says, for sure. Oh, it looks like we got some questions coming in. All right. So it looks like, I think what I'm going to do is, because I think all of these kind of questions will be some really good ones for the Q&A. I'll keep my eye on it from now on, though, I promise. What we're going to do now is we're going to walk through using a mind mapping software. I say mind mapping, but more flowchart. I'm going to walk you guys through a few examples of segmentation funnels and mapping those things out with Flowcharts software. Okay. But I just want to make sure we're all on the same page so far. Yep, looks like, okay, awesome, guys. And I appreciate all of your feedback so far. I'm going to see about keeping this thing up. So you have to know, I am not a long-time user of GoToWebinar. I've basically been doing it for a couple months, and so I'm still trying to get just trying to make sure I'm using it right and giving you guys the best experience here. Okay, so like I said, we're going to talk about using some mind mapping software for planning out a couple of different. Basically, we're going to look at some examples of segmentation funnels, and I'll show you how you map those out, and then how it kind of translates. And then I think I even have an example inside of Bucket that we can use, so you can see kind of how it goes from the map to implementing a Bucket to how the actual segmentation funnel looks in the real world. Does that sound good? Get a couple of yeses. Yes, yes. And to answer your question, Diane, would PowerPoint work for Flowchart software? Absolutely. A piece of paper would work. I've got, you can't see it, obviously, because I'm not using a camera, but I've got two whiteboards here, and they all have, literally, that's all they are, is flowcharts for segmentation funnels. So anything, you can use anything. I'm going to walk you through Lucid Chart just because it looks the best, and it, like, if you're presenting it to someone, it's easier to see. So let's do this. Let's start with, I'm going to start with this one. And so this is going to be a simple segmentation funnel. It's going to have a bunch of questions, but basically the idea here is to give someone the idea that they have a specific behavior type for their Jack Russell dog. Okay, I'm going to jump over here to this this wireframe, this flowchart, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to call it from now on for the rest of this time, I think, a flowchart. So what we've done with this segmentation funnel is we decided, you know what, hey, let's just plan all the questions out in advance and then have the one section where once they choose this option, it sends them to the outcome. So I'm going to tell, we started, when we built this, we started at all of the outcomes. Remember I said earlier, begin with the outcomes? Well, there's four ways that we sell this dog training service. And it's with the aristocrat, it's the types of dogs. Basically, is this your type of Jack Russell dog? And when you explain it to them, they're like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what Buster is, right? So that's the concept of getting them to buy what we're selling. And so we have the four different outcomes. Remember I said earlier, an outcome could be a spin on your sales message. And that's what this is. It's a spin on, hey, buy this training. And then, you know, the various other products that we have to sell you in relation to your dog. And so what we do here is we start with this outcome pages. We've got this aristocrat, we've got this yogi, maverick, nomad. Right? These are the different spins on the sales message based on the type of dog that you have. And so what we do to lead up to this is, now that we know what our outcomes are, we can go in and start building our questions, right? You want to find out, what kind of dogs do you have? Is it a male or female? How old is it? Basically, I'm just reading you all the questions that are on here. Is it a purebred or a mix? Does it have specific behavior problems or personality traits? And you notice what's happening here is we're asking these questions. We're not using that information in the quiz, but we are taking it in so that we can use it later on, right? So a lot of times you won't even need every single one of these questions to deliver the solution. You're just taking it in so that later on when I send an email, hey, is your dog having this, this behavior problem that you mentioned earlier? And so that's something to keep in mind. It's another reason why you do the mapping to begin with, is so that you have this stuff in front of you so that you can use it later. It's not all just bottled up inside of a software like Bucket, right, where you'd have to go kind of dig it out. You've got it in a nice place to access it for later. But then you notice we get to this personality trait. And this happens, so based on their personality, we take them to, let me drag this around so you can see. I might have to, well, it's kind of hard to see it out there. Can you guys see it, or is this too tiny? If it's too tiny, just let me know. Bigger, better? Yeah, why don't I do that? So basically, you can kind of see it. So you've got these dots, right? You got these little dots. And I mean, and you can do dots, and you can do slashes. It doesn't matter the way you draw it out. All that matters is that you have it drawn out, right? So what I'm basically trying to show you here is that the main question, the only question that has anything to do with the outcomes, is this personality trait. All right. So what you see here is you've got these dots, dot, 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 and based on your choice, it takes you to the lead capture and the outcome, which in this case, the two are kind of the same, for the choice that they made. So this would be what you would call a single segmentation funnel. You ask as many questions as you need to really make it feel like they're answering, a legitimate quiz, right? But then only one of those answers has anything to do with the outcome. However, again, like I mentioned earlier, you can use the information that you're collecting for any of your marketing later on down the line. So again, so as you can see here, the way that, so we mapped this out, right? So we came up with all of our different outcomes. Then we started writing questions down and started figuring out, okay, we can ask all these things. I think we started out with it was like 20 plus questions. We got it narrowed down to about, about 10 different questions. Again, what you're typically going to end up doing is just asking questions to help you get to that personality trait question, right? That multiple outcome mapping question. And in a little bit, I'll show you guys kind of how this works inside of Bucket if you haven't used the segmentation funnel before. But does this make sense to everybody? Like how we came up with the idea to map this one out, and then how we eventually came up with the idea of just using the single question to map to the outcome. Have I left anybody behind? Okay, Diane, I'm seeing your question. So this screen is not inside of Bucket. There's no. This is a different software. This is called, if you can see here, it's called Lucid Chart. So what you're looking at here is just like completely different software. You don't even need to use Lucid Chart. You can use PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, again, like I mentioned earlier, a piece of paper, a whiteboard. This is not inside of Bucket. So hopefully that looks like you get that. All right. Better. Cool. Awesome, guys. Great. So, anyway, so that's how you would plan out. As you can see, we kind of did like a left to right. It's a real streamlined approach, right? It's a simple segmentation. It looks, and let's walk through it, and just so you can see kind of what it looks like in real life. So as you can see here, we've mapped out here. Let's go back to the beginning here. We'll just walk through each of these. So you see here, we've got the welcome page. Welcome page. Tell me my Jack Russell behavior type. And then again, so we've got male or female. We left that one in. Is it a rescue? Looks like we may have just added that one back in. Again, as you can see here, it doesn't, that's going to be, we'll use that later on in the market. I think that was just added in, actually. That's a good idea. It's less than a year old. Is it a pure breed or mix? And then now, as you can see here, we've got the behavior problems. And then we get to the personality traits. Now, one thing I want you to notice is that you see we have like precise, goes with the flow, strong-willed, antsy. Notice how those have certain names, but that we don't use that exact name over here on the outcome. The reason why is if you ask somebody a question and they tell you the answer, and then you tell them later on, hey, your Jack Russell's antsy. Well, it doesn't, again, it doesn't feel like, aha, this is totally my, Buster. Instead, they'll feel like, I just told you he was antsy, now you're telling me again. And so that's why another good reason for having this stuff written down and mapped out beforehand is it gives you something to look at so that later on you can say, you know what, we don't want to ask him if he's, nomadic. We want to find out if he's a maverick or a nomad or antsy. You see what I'm saying? So by having this there, we can actually look at it as marketers and say, hey, we already said that over here. Why don't we call it something else over here so we can really give them that aha moment. And so this is where the segmentation comes into play, like you saw over here. So this is that next question. You walk through, as you can see, picking up commands. Not very well. And techniques. And how often do you do training sessions? And so as you can see here, based on that, we chose ANSI, right? Then ANSI gets taken to the Nomad lead capture page, and it'll go also to the Nomad outcome page. Does that make sense to everybody? Just make sure real quick. Yes, great. Yes, makes sense. Awesome, guys. Let's see here. In a video training, there was an option to add tags based on each of these questions. Yes, Josh, that will do inside. That's going to be a good question. That's going to be good for Q&A. Remind me, I will definitely follow up on your tags question. What are the follow-up squares? Rainer, are you asking from this chart here? I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean by the follow-up squares. Yeah, so each of these squares, okay, so these next two squares are just the questions that came after the big segmentation question, right? So we had like these 4 boxes here just to make it, again, just to make it easy to see later on when we're planning this thing out. And like I said, guys, your mapping, I'm going to show you another map here in a second that looks like night and day different to this one. This is to give you an idea, like show you, oh yeah, if I just go in and I just map this thing out left to right, totally doable. But we're going to show you what a more advanced one looks like in development stage, and an even simpler one than this one, what that looks like. So, exactly, this is just one of many map styles. And thank you for that, Suzette. All right. Let's take a look at another example. Let's see. Because again, guys, what I really want to do here is just, again, this webinar is mainly for Honestly, it's really just to get your imagination juices going. Honestly, if you my thought was if if we could show them some examples and we can help them see what others are doing that are doing successfully, maybe you can see that and start just applying it to your own. So here we've got a quiz based on qualifying for a business loan. This is a B2B segmentation funnel. And let's quickly, I'm not going to go through the funnel yet. Let's take a look at, oops, this looks like a little bit too big. Can you guys see this? Okay, is it too small at this? I'll zoom it back in if you need me to. Too small? All right. It's like 50-50, too small. I'm going to go bigger, and we'll just scroll it around. I would rather everyone be able to see it. It's always, whenever you ask that question, you always know it's going to be 50-50. But anyways, all right. So, here's, I did not build this one, but I've looked at it, and I love the concept. And it's a lot different than the one we just looked at. So earlier, we looked at just a single segmentation funnel, right? You ask one question and you map it to the outcomes. You ask a bunch of other questions again to give that feeling that they're taking an advanced quiz, but really it all hinges on what they chose in that one question. This one, again, it's B2B, and we're talking financing, so there's a little more involved here. And this is what's called, what's used in this as far as bucket is concerned is branching logic, all right? So what we had to start with here, again, like before, we have 3 outcomes, all right? The 3 outcomes are a $100,000 offer, which is basically a loan for $100,000, a $10,000 offer, or not a fit. So those are the 3 outcomes that you could have for working with Swift Capital. Either getting $100,000, getting $10,000, or not being a good fit, and then being sent off to an affiliate offer. So again, do you guys see the concept of starting with the outcome, how that is going to work to our advantage? Because now we know what questions we have to ask to get to, if I'm going to hand you $100,000, there's some things I need to know. If I'm going to give you 10 grand, there's some things I'm going to know. And, those questions are also tell me whether or not to give you anything or not, and whether you're a good fit for one of our affiliates, right? So then you go into coming up with those questions. Now, the way that it works out on this specific segmentation funnel is it starts off with what are your average monthly credit cards, or it starts off with the welcome page. You always want to just see the entire chart because eventually you're going to be playing with different welcome pages. So you always want to have that there just so you have the full picture, right? You can go and tell your copywriter, hey, I need you to write copy for these different things. So that's what we always say, just build the entire thing out and draw it all out if possible. So anyways, back where I was saying, so you start with that first question and notice how based on, you see how we've selected this answer. If it's less than 10K, the question 6 goes into how long have you take them to the question 6. How long have you been in business? And then you take them on this track here. If they choose anything else, you walk them through to this next question. And again, I'll show you guys how this works out in Bucket. But because you can see, I mean, if you hadn't had this planned out and you're sitting there trying to figure this stuff out inside of Bucket, it would have been a nightmare. Not only to get it built the first time, but then to be able to go back and adjust it or change anything. If you'd had to add a question in later that might have thrown it all off, it would have been a nightmare. And so what we're doing here is we're walking people based on their answers to the different, they're called branches, right? Remember I mentioned branching logic? So you've got this one branch up here that if you make it all the way through this track, you go to the $100,000 offer or outcome. If at any point in time you answer a question that winds up in this second level, you go to the $10,000 offer. And if at any point you answer a question, which every question, as you can see here, that's marked in red is the judgments. If anyone answers yes to any of those questions, the bankruptcy or judgments, they automatically get pushed down to this third outcome, which is the not a good fit, right? Is this all making sense so far, how we kind of map this out? And what I can do, if you guys want, I'm not sure. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure if I'm able to print out or send you guys these links. I'm actually logged in right now, so I don't know if I can give out the links to these specific charts. I do have a cool thing to give you, and this is definitely recorded. Just so you know. I've got a question here from Paul. So is a segmentation funnel real-time as they complete the survey? Yes. So that's the idea, right? So what we're looking at right now, and I'll show you the example, Paul. So what we're looking at now is what we do to begin, at the beginning. We're planning this thing out. We're not building a thing until I can sit back and say, okay, CMO of Swift Capital, if you're gonna be paying for traffic and sending people, this is what they're gonna see, right? And you put this in front of them so they can see exactly what's happening with the traffic that they're paying for, and so they know every dollar will be accounted for and everyone will be sent to the right place. Basically keeping the marketing message intact, right? And so so we're in the planning phase now. Once you've got this planned out, you go into Bucket and build it, and here's what you're looking at. We're going to walk through the real time, to answer your question, Paul, of what this actually looks like in real life. So once you put this out there and you throw some ads up on Google or Facebook or wherever you're advertising, this is what it looks like. So you go to find out how much you qualify for, and then, so now let me walk back over here. You got this question 1. So based on what I choose here, will be taking me to the next question. So if I say I make $10,000 to $100,000 a month, I'm at this question. If I had answered less than 10K, I would be looking at the same question, but I would be in a different section inside of Bucket, right? Is that making sense? Cool. Yes, makes sense. Okay. Now, how long have you been in business? That is this Q2. So I'm going to put 1 to 3 years. As you can see, that question, if I said less than 1 year, would have dropped me down into the second track, right? So the rest of them, no matter what else I answered on that one, sends me to this. So I'm still on this first track right here. What is your credit score? Anything less than 500 or I don't know would drop me down to that second track. So we're going to say 700 plus. Do you have any liens or judgments on you right now? Okay, now remember earlier we said if we say yes to that, automatically disqualified. And that would have been the same if we were on this. So let's say no. Have you ever filed for bankruptcy? Again, no. Final step, find out how much funding you qualify for. Now, how good of a hook is that, right? You've gone through, now it's time to find out how much you qualify. And I'll just put some test info here. Find out how much I qualify for. And you qualify for up to $100,000 in business funding. And then from here, you go off to complete your application for the $100,000 in business funding. As you can see, we were able to know exactly what our outcome would be based on mapping this thing out. So we don't have to guess. We don't have to get there in the middle of it and be like, oh, what was it again that we had to choose to get to the outcome for the 100,000? It's already done. We've already mapped it out. We've already written down the questions, and then we've charted each response to where it will go. And I mentioned earlier, this is called branching logic inside of Bucket. This is a really good webinar we did, I want to say a month or so ago on that. And I could point that to you in a little bit. So I'm not going to go deep into going in and building branching logic right now because that's a whole hour by itself. But just so you can see, having it mapped out to begin with means we could, as long as the software supports what we want to do, having it mapped out means it's so much easier just to go in and knock it out. So let me go in here and check on some questions. You guys really want these flowcharts. All right, so I don't think I can get them to you, just again off of the links that I have. But I will see what we can do about getting them added to the help section, because everybody wants them. So in that case, since I can't do it for you right here, I will get them to you somehow. It will probably be in the form of putting them like on a blog post or in the help. The other good thing, exactly. Do you have a graphic background for each question, or is it more like a blank page with a radio button? I don't, Jane, I'm not 100% sure I understand exactly what you're asking. Are you asking for, I'm sorry, I don't, anyways. I just took a screenshot of the flowcharts and printed them out. Jason is the innovative one here. Yeah, if you like it, do a screenshot real quick. Okay, cool. Well, I will. How to design your question layout? So if you do it in Lucidchart, you can literally do it any way you want. As you guys can see, like this is totally different looking than the other way. We didn't even use red lines on the other one. We used green dashes, and we used different kinds of arrows. You can design it however you want to. But inside of Bucket, you could use images if that's a question. Yeah, so inside of Bucket, for each question that you ask, you can use a graphical, like an image to represent the question for sure, if that's what you're talking about. Sorry, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but I definitely want to help you out. Is that what you were talking about, Jane? Awesome, cool. And we'll actually, you know what? It's funny you bring that up. The next, I have one more example. I know we're running. It's about 4:36, and I want to do some more Q&A. But I want to get through one more example too. And the next example actually is exactly what you're asking me. Look at this. What is that? Pictures? It's totally pictures. So it's totally possible, and I'll walk you through how to do that. All right, so this is Proactive. It's a multi-million-dollar company. They sell skincare products. Again, I wasn't part of the team that built it. I believe that Ryan Levesque actually was part of like one of their big survey and quiz building projects. I don't know for sure. All I know is that we have the design for this. It was kind of built after, but basically taking into consideration how you would do it. And then we went and built it, this version that you see here inside of Bucket. It would have been impossible to do if we were just trying to make it up as we went. As you can see by this chart, it's a fairly complex mapping. And the reason, again, I don't bring it up to scare you or shock you, but just to show you what is possible, because it's honestly not that confusing. It looks like it could be confusing, but it's not, because of the fact that we wrote everything down. And so what we did to start with, again, like before, we found all of the outcomes. It would have been impossible to do if we didn't figure out what all the outcomes were, right? We wouldn't know how does this thing tie to that thing and so on. So So what we've got here is the outcomes. So for each outcome, there's a skin tone outcome for a products that I guess work on your help your skin tone. There's an anti-aging product. There's a head-to-toe kind of product. I think most of these are series too, so it's kind of like a skin tone collection, anti-aging collection, head-to-toe, dry skin, another anti-aging over here. But I think there was a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah, so there was There was 5 different outcomes that we had to map to. And again, as you can see, it would have been impossible to give somebody the exact solution if you didn't have this have these outcomes outlined to begin with. Because where do you start with the questions? Then how do you map them if you don't already have the outcomes there, right? So is this making sense? What again? Yeah, anything with wrinkles goes to anti-aging. That's right, Josh. So I know you guys have heard me say outcomes, 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 and you know that again. It's only to point out that you don't. And I see it a lot. I see people go in and just start asking the questions, and then the outcomes are kind of like an afterthought. And an outcome doesn't even have to be a specific product to begin with. It could just be like, these are the problems that I know that people have. Let me make the outcome, and then I can ask the questions that go along with getting to the right outcome. Yeah, so this is the outcome section. So then what we do from there, right, is we come up and just like we do with all of our other all the other funnels that we map out, is we take them through the whole thing. So we've got this first Q1. Are you male or female? So on this one, we didn't actually have a landing page because what Proactive does is they just have a button to a quiz on their website. Here, click here to take the quiz. They take the quiz, they click it, and the first thing you see, it's not, hey, take the quiz. There's no welcome page. It just goes straight to, are you a man or a woman, right? And so then what you do is we go to this next step here, and this is the Q2. How would you describe your skin? And then of course we have the option of telling them you're as a man or a woman. And as you can see here, you've got combo, normal, dry, and oily, all right? And what you're looking at here is if they choose dry, then they're automatically attached to the dry skin track, okay? If they choose oily, they're automatically tied to the oily track, or like we mentioned earlier, branch. All right. So we did it a whole different way because there's just different types of questions that we're going to be asking. But then everyone in this gets taken to this next question: where do your breakouts occur? And if they chose earlier, if they chose combo or normal, and this place was their face, then they're on this specific track. Are you getting to see here? If we hadn't done this, if we hadn't mapped this out, if we were trying to do this in Bucket, here's what it would have looked like. We would have been sitting here trying to figure out, okay, where do we put this? This is just to show you what Bucket looks like. This is not a place where you want to sit here and do your planning, right? I mean, you got questions that need to be canceled, saved, and if you mess up one, it messes up them all. You see what I'm saying? So if you were trying to do this all over here, if you didn't plan to begin with, you would probably be bald by the time you finally worked it out, if you ever worked it out inside of a system like Bucket. And that's just, it would be like that even if it was the most intuitive, easy, kindergartner system on the planet. You still want to have it mapped out before you go in there and start trying to build something like this inside of Bucket, right? I mean, the difference between the two, like, there's no way you could just instantly look at this and say, oh, well, if this person says this, then they're automatically going to be this, right? It requires planning and drawing it out to begin with, saving everybody so much headache and getting it done right, getting those conversions the way you want them to be. because like I think it was Josh that pointed out that if anybody hits wrinkles, they go to the anti-aging, right? How weird would it be to send somebody who hit wrinkles to head to toe? It wouldn't make any sense, right? So, anyways, I think you guys are getting the point, right, of why it's so important and how to go about mapping this stuff out. And once I go to the beginning so I can get a screenshot. So let me see here. Let me see if I can actually back it out just a little bit for you. Is that too small? Or can you get a good screenshot with that? Okay. All right, let me see if I can. Well, there's the kind of like that first part of it. I was trying to get you like the whole thing. I mean, this is kind of like if you just hack off the first question, like this is the whole thing right there. And like I said, guys, hearing you ask for these, my next move is obviously just going like, hey, can we just put these up in the help section? I think that's basically all it's going to boil down to. So let's do this. Why don't we, real quick, I know we're kind of running short on time. It's 4:45. Again, I want to be supremely, just aware of your time and get you guys out of here. But let's walk through this just so you can see the difference, right? And I think someone had asked about this earlier about using images. So as you can see, this is a highly graphical quiz. This was actually meant to be looked at on mobile, right? If you're on a mobile, all you got to do is smash this button with your thumb, and you're taken to the next question. So we said oily. Where do your breakouts usually occur? Let's just say face, because remember that's going to take us to how often do you break out. And then which of the following most concerns you? So again, we're at which of the following most concerns you? We're in this phase. And so what I'm going to do is say wrinkles. We know what's going to happen if I click wrinkles, right, Josh? You are going to the anti-aging product. So we know that because we built it out and we planned it in advance. So there's no guessing what's going to happen based on what someone chose. And I told you guys I wouldn't go too deep into how to build all this stuff in Bucket. We've got a ton of just materials on how to implement these things. But just so you can kind of see what it looks like, and you kind of saw it earlier. So what we did here, and we did, this is pretty much the examples from, this is the proactive example here, but it's kind of the same thing that we did inside of the Swift financial one, where we use this branching technology, or branching logic. And to use branching logic, what you'll do is you'll first come up with your question, right? So we had the male or female question up here. And so question 2 is, as a male or female, man or woman, how would you describe your skin type? And then based on their answer, click this little blue button here. Based on what they chose for this next question, where do your breakouts mostly occur? We send them to that branch. All right, so every question, notice it's the same exact question. 3, where do your breakouts mostly occur? 3, where do your breakouts mostly occur? And 3, where do your breakouts mostly occur? What the person doesn't see is that they're actually on a different track. They're on the A, B, or C track, okay? Is this making sense to you guys? And so what you did is, like over here, we said if they say dry, we put them on the dry skin track, which in this case is A. For the oily track, it's B. And for these normal to combo, they're on the C track. Okay? Is this making sense how we built it out here? Awesome. So Josh asked, what questions do you create first? First to last or last to first? Honestly, what I typically do is I just start writing questions. I think of when we have the outcomes, just like what would you ask somebody who's sitting in front of you saying, hey, you're sitting here looking at me with my bad wrinkles that I wish I could get rid of. So I would first ask, well, are you a male or female? And then start asking the different questions. It doesn't make a difference how it's placed within bucket. It totally does, but it totally does. And that's why you want to map it out first, because you don't want to get in there and say, have forgotten to ask, how often do you break out? Well, that's actually not a good one. Let's say you don't want to get in there and find out that figure out which most concerned them, and then have to add that in and break everything in bucket. Like, just imagine the nightmare. Imagine the nightmare if we had built this thing, right? And we'd forgotten to put this question in. And then we had to add this question in and snap all the other stuff that led up to it. So again, you're saving yourself, I don't know how much headache, a bunch probably. Now, that's not to say every single segmentation funnel you ever create has to be absolutely positively perfect before you roll it out. You may forget, oh man, we should have totally asked this to get to that. After you're up and running, you're seeing things happen. Maybe conversions aren't as great as they could possibly be. That's just where learning and adding and having this stuff mapped out will give you that advantage later on. Can you go over the outcomes in bucket from dry, oily, normal to ABC and how it builds? Yes. Why don't I do that real quick? All right. So let's do this real quick. I'm going to jump back inside of bucket real quick. So this was showing you guys how to use the branching logic. I'm going to close that. We're going to look at the outcomes. Okay? Because every time you create an outcome, notice when we were looking at A, B, and C before. So again, another reason to start with outcomes is you can't map things. You can't decide what direction to take if you don't have the outcomes built. So every one of these outcomes that we have, dry skin, oily, normal combo, non-face, and then the anti-aging, they each have a letter associated with them, right? Again, just to help us later on. And each one of these goes to that external redirect page, the one that you saw here. So you can see, I don't know if you can see the URL, but it's actually the proactive stuff. So when you build something in bucket, it doesn't have to stay stuck in bucket. It can if you just need to get something up and running fast. But if you ever need to, build out and have more customization, you can totally do that using the external redirect. But anyways, so as you can see here, when you add an outcome in, it gives it that letter. And so what we've done using this branching logic is we direct them to this last question, this Q5, that gives them access to the outcomes, based on what they chose. So it's all the branching logic landed them to this one question, which is all, if you can see here, is the big question, right? It's all the same question, but they're just on the different branches inside of it. And so, wrong button, of course. So at this point, based on where they are, and notice here too, this thing is kind of crazy, right? It doesn't, there's only two choices. We never would have been able to build this if we hadn't first built out, okay, if they're on the A track, which I think was oily, was oily, based on their answers, this is where they're going to go. And let's jump back over here. Could you imagine trying to do this if you didn't have it already mapped out? It would be, honestly, I think impossible. Unless you're like super photographic memory, being able to remember like all the different things. In fact, I can even see some areas of improvement, like just having it now and looking back at it. It made sense, during the build, but if we had actually put in the outcome letters on each of these, I think it would have been even easier. Like now that I'm looking at it, and that's just something to take for yourself, right? When you're putting out the flow chart, maybe it makes more sense to you to put the letter that you're going to be using for your outcome. Like once you actually have it in bucket, to go back into your chart. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, oh man, that's a good idea, is to actually put the letter of the outcome on your tracks. So see that? Always learning, always adapting. We can insert questions anywhere along the way. Yes. Oh, how do you add a question? Let's do this, just so you guys can see. It is simple to add the question in. I'm not saying it's impossible, but here's what you've got to consider. So especially in a more advanced funnel like this, like every one of these questions has what's called a variation on it. And what a variation is again, just it's the same answer, but it's part of the branching, right? So if I were to go add in a question, if I were to add a question smack dab in the middle of this without having planned it out, just like, you know what, I'm just going to add a question because I don't care. What's going to happen is I've got to go back in and redo all my branching logic. But if you wanted to add a question, you would drag, question. Honestly, I don't even want to do it because I know. Let's just put it this way: if you get to the point where you forgot a question, can you do it? Yes. Should you do it? You probably want to create a clone and do it there. Here, but I'll just show you. If you do want to add one, you just drag the new question in and go to town on building it. I'm not going to do it there. Is it possible? Again, you'll hear me say this forever. If you don't map it out first, I wouldn't do it, honestly. So I'm getting a dare. Diane is daring me to add the question, how many times a day do you wash your face? So where would you ask that? Let's see, female, what type, where do your breakouts occur? So yeah, why don't we do that? We could say, here, we'll just add this radio button over here. How many times a day do you wash your face? Now, here's what you would have to do if you added this question. I would have to make a variation for each of these questions. Here, 1x, 2x, 3x. All right. So what you would have to do now is go in, and again, the reason why I wouldn't do this without writing it out, because you'd have to go in and kind of chart, okay, from question, this question up here, which of those people, does it affect the outcome? And if it does, where should I be sending the people to? Otherwise, what I think I could do is just send them, just duplicate it. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I would just add 4 variations. See, and I'm totally guessing, and I have, without writing it down and having it mapped out to begin with, you're already starting to see, I'm over here kind of shaky fingers, and I've done this like more times than most people. So I would just do it like as if I was sending it to that, like if I was sending it to question 5 probably, and then just duplicate it. But before I did that, and I'm not even joking, I would first come in here and I would rather break this thing than break this thing, because you can do some Control Z on your PowerPoint. You can't Control Z on bucket.io, right? So I'm actually going to delete this question, because how many people would kill me if they wanted to use this for an example, and all of a sudden, how many times do you wash your face has popped up. So it's not to say that you couldn't add a question. I think you guys get what I'm saying here, right? It's not that you can't. It's that you should. You should. Yes, Suzette. Plan first, build second. That honestly, if that's all you take away from this, then I did my job. And so, okay, and so that's it, pretty much. You know, we've looked at the different ways of planning these things out. I mean, there's no right way to plan it out other than, well, there is a right way. Start with the outcomes, and then ask the questions to get them there. And then from there, then you can kind of play around with, you know, how do you track them, and how do you get them to the right outcome. And for that, we've got, like I said before, we've got a ton of really great content and help files to help you guide you there. In fact, this is actually a great segue. If you are trying to build one and you do want some help from somebody who's built one before, if this is your first time ever trying to do it, you can easily get access to a bucket specialist. And the way that you will do that is with this special link that I'm going to put in the chat here. I'm going to drop this chat in here. If you're trying to build a segmentation funnel out, or a survey even, Diane is still trying to tell me what to put in the proactive. Well, I'm moving on, Dan. I've already told you I am not putting anything in there without writing it down first. What I am saying though is, if you need help building a segmentation or a survey, I'm going to put a link to a one-on-one call in here, and totally inviting you. Oh, I didn't do it. That's why. Totally inviting everyone who's on this call to come and get on one of those. I'm always happy to, you know, again, like I said before, you've seen how to plan it out. You know, that part you could probably figure out on your own. If you need some help with that part, that's fine. But mostly, once you get to the part where you're trying to get it into Bucket, that's the part I can totally help you out with. And what I would highly recommend is you jump on the schedule now. These things, you know, they go super fast. I think even now, the closest that you could even schedule is a week, maybe a week and a half out. Let me do this. I'm going to actually try to. Hold on, Dan. I'm going to try to put it in this other thing here. I did it on the questions, but I'm going to try to put it just in the chat and see if that works. Can you guys let me know? And you have to forget my noobishness. I mean, I've been doing GoToWebinars for a couple months, but I'm still kind of newbie with this thing. All right, can you guys see that link? I just put it in the chat. And I closed. Yes, I got my link. Copy. Before I let you go, oh my goodness, it's already 5 o'clock. I meant to have you guys out of here. You're so much fun to talk to. There's one more aspect to this that I did not even bring up. We just started having so much fun. I started having fun. I don't know about you guys. There is preparing your questions for Bucket, because you don't have to. Even, I think one of the questions you asked before is, how do you add this stuff in? How do you just add a new question in? And I told you, don't, unless you plan it first. But the only way to plan is not with a mind map, right? You also want to kind of organize and be able to look at your entire funnel in maybe a document, where maybe you could just top down go straight to exactly what you're looking for. Because if you've been in Bucket, you know to get to certain aspects, you have to open screens and get to screens and all of that good stuff. What if there was a way you could go just straight down as though you were filling out a questionnaire on a piece of paper? If you could get your entire funnel, all the questions, all the design, everything created first before you even opened Bucket. and you can just go and copy paste your content. See this little title on the box here? Copy paste this content into bucket.io. What if you had that and you just go through and copy and paste everything into Bucket? Would that make things easier? Yeah? Yes. Absolutely. Okay, well, guess what? I'm going to give you this. It is a yes. Yes, I will share it, but with one caveat. You absolutely, positively must make a copy of it instead of writing it. Don't write in this. What you'll do, you see me, I'm clicking this little share link here. I'm going to copy this link for you guys. Copy this clipboard. What I want you to do, when you get this link, I'm going to put it in the chat. The first thing I want you to do is come over here and hit File, Make a Copy. I don't know if this is how it's going to look in yours. I think you don't have edit options anyways. I think it'll just tell you to save as a copy. Or if you're real crazy and you don't have a Gmail or a Driver or account, you can download it. It should work. But if it doesn't, just let me know. But you should be able to just make a copy into your Google Drive. And so if you can promise me that you will not edit this, I will paste it right now. And you can go download it. Or make a copy of it, whatever. All right, since you all promised, there you have it. I got it, it's in writing. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Looks like everyone's jumping in just fine. Great. Is Bucket surveys for the appointment? Diane, great eye. Yes, it is. In fact, it's probably the absolute best idea that we've ever had is to be able to survey every time that we say, hey, do you want to talk to somebody? And again, it just gives us even more learning on what's happening out in with the people that are using our software. It's how we know to get things done faster or you know, even better than we already have them. That's how we come out with these. That's how we come up with these ideas for examples. It's like, for instance, here, let me just give you guys just a quick, just so you can see. You can just kind of see how, you know, we kind of eat our own dog food kind of thing. I'm going to log out on this one. And I'll just show you guys this. Again, the only reason I'm showing you this is just so you can kind of get the practical application, right? I mean, how many people are just going to go show you their surveys? I will show you these so you can kind of start to understand why you'll see some of the things that we do here in Bucket, like why all of a sudden were there pop-ups everywhere that show how to use a screen? Why do we have certain webinars? Why, you know, why do some things occur? And the reason why is you've got these great things called word clouds. This is our Discover survey. If you haven't made one of these and sent it out to your people yet, I highly recommend it. I know we're talking segmentation funnels here, but this is good stuff. Like, this is what you guys are telling us. You know, webinars, we want more. We want examples is a huge word in here, right? Support, segmentation. So it tells us what you're looking for. And to answer your question earlier, yes, that's why we do the survey tool. Good call, Josh. Josh said, where is that awesome branching logic and tagging and all the other help stuff that I told you we have? So in your Bucket account, you'll come up here and click Help. Boop. And then what I recommend, and again, it's not just because I'm the one doing them, but honestly, the webinars, this is a full hour of content, right? Where we go deep on certain subjects. So I would say your best bet, in most cases, if you really want to go deep on a subject and really get the most out of it, is listen to me talk for another hour on one of these recordings. Again, everyone that I've ever sent to these, this is what I would say is the most in-depth help. We have the detailed videos and how-tos for all of our screens throughout the help, but obviously there's only one place where they get covered like A to Z, and that's in here. So if you need help with integrating Zapier with Bucket and figuring out how to use the tags and pass all the information through to your ESP, I would tell you to come and look at this. With the branching logic, well, I would just lie to you and tell you that it was here. I know it should be here, but apparently it is not. Well, I'm glad you asked me that question because I would have told you, oh, go check out the webinar replays. So I'll get that in there, but that's where I would go for sure. Is there an Infusionsoft video? There will be soon, Diane. We're doing, I think they're announcing the integration tomorrow or the next day. And then, so look for, yeah, I thought you'd be excited. You'll see that, we'll do a whole big show about it. We'll make a big deal. We make big deals about the little things and the big things. I thought I saw direct integrations coming. Yes, you are correct on that, Ramona. ActiveCampaign, I'm not so sure Infusionsoft this week. Is for sure. Can I have the survey template you talked about at the beginning? I missed that call. Oh, yes. You would ask me for that. I should have prepared. I shouldn't have promised it unless I already had it ready to go. Let me see. Copy and paste this content. Let me do this. I'm going to pause my screen share because I'm going to have to dive into the depths of my Google Docs. So hold on one sec. Pause.